With Liquor Barn, you can shop your favorite bourbon, that perfect bottle of wine, or discover something new. To place an order for pickup or delivery, download the Liquor Barn app, visit liquorbarn.com, or call your nearest Liquor Barn location. Follow us on social media and subscribe to our email list for all the latest news on products, promotions, and events. Liquor Barn, where Kentuckians go to celebrate life. Cheers!
There's something different about Lexington, Kentucky. Something you can't quite put your finger on. The source of this magic? Limestone. It gives our native spirit an unmatched purity that will keep you coming back for more. But bourbon this good, from a place this beautiful, is too wonderful to keep hidden away. So come visit and see why Lexington is Bourbon Land. Brought to you by Visit Lex. Plan your Bourbon Land adventure at visitlex.com.
Limestone Farms bourbons are like a secret portal to a world of rich flavors where high proof meets smooth satisfaction. Every barrel is meticulously crafted and blended with a specific message in mind. Experience clean delineated flavor profiles that will have you engaged from the first sip to the final drop, making your palate beg for just one more taste. Limestone Farms, bringing heritage home.
We could tell you that Penelope Bourbon's 4-grain straight bourbon whiskey is a multiple double gold winner at SIP Awards, or that Wine Enthusiast named it a Best Buy, or that Tasting Table named it one of the 12 best small batch bourbons under $40. But really, all you need to know about Penelope 4-grain is that it aims to please. Whether you enjoy it neat or mixed in your favorite cocktail, Penelope 4-grain is a staple in every well-stocked bar. Pick up your bottle at penelopebourbon.com.
Welcome to the Bourbon Life Podcast, your source for all things bourbon. Join your hosts, Mark and Matt, as they drink and review bourbons, share news about upcoming events, interview the who's who in the bourbon world, and, most importantly, bring you along for the fun of living the bourbon life. Now, here's your hosts, Mark and Matt.
All right, everybody, welcome back for another episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and unfortunately, Matt is not with me tonight down here in the Bourbon Life Studios. Matt's actually in Hawaii. He's prepping for the Ironman World Championships that are going to be Saturday. So this comes out Friday. So keep Matt in your thoughts and prayers, and he'll be running on Saturday doing the Ironman World Championship. So really excited for Matt. But I'm excited about this show. This is a 3-time guest. We've only had a handful of 3-time guests, so I'm really excited to have this guest back. But before we get into that, I do want to say we are the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by Liquor Barn. We appreciate their support. We appreciate the support of all of our sponsors. We couldn't bring you this show every week without the support of the sponsors that we have, like the wonderful guest that we have this evening as well. And then with that said, I'll just go ahead and introduce you to who we got. We've got Amir Peay. He is the owner-operator of the James E. Pepper Distillery here in Lexington. Amir, welcome back for 3 times, man.
Thank you. It's great to be here. It's a real honor to be a three-peat guest.
Yeah, man. We're going to have to do something. We talk about this. Barry Bruniger was just on, and he was like, "What do I get?"
Maybe it's a ring or some kind of jacket or something.
Well, we've talked about that. Yeah. Because I usually wear a gray fleece. That's my standard uniform. And so I thought maybe we could do like a green fleece, like the Masters,
Yeah, like the Masters.
Have the Bourbon Life logo on it.
Count me in. Yeah. We'll like a members only type jacket. Something.
Once you're in the club, you're in the club forever. You got your fleece, you're good to go.
All right, 3-peat. Well, then I'm expecting the jacket.
There you go. I'm going to mail it to you. Oh, it's in the mail.
Okay.
Amir. Yeah, I got you. So, man, how are things going?
Things are going really great.
Awesome.
We are keeping really busy at the distillery in the whiskey world, and things are going fantastic.
Awesome. Yeah. That's good to hear. Well, before we jump into the conversation, let's talk, because you brought, man, I'm shocked when you say, "Hey, I got this." I'm like, "For real?" So tell everybody, you can actually hold up the bottle if you want to show everybody too, but tell everybody what you brought to kick us off tonight, man.
Well, I brought one from the whiskey archives, and it's almost at this point a dusty from our own whiskey production career. So this is a bottle of 1776 rye, but it's a 15-year-old release. that we put out well over a decade ago. It was distilled at the Lawrenceburg Distillery in Indiana in 1997.
That's crazy. Before it was even MGP. Everybody knows it as MGP, right?
Before it was MGP. I began working with, at that time, it was known as LDI. They were owned by a parent company in the Caribbean who was on the verge of bankruptcy. And I used to have to call them and harass them to try to, sell me whiskey, to work with me to relaunch the brand. And I did so under the 1776 label.
Right.
And, it took a little bit, but I finally got them to start working with me. And I love working with them for the 1776 rye because James E. Pepper used to produce a pure rye whiskey, 100% rye in the mash bill. And so, as a lot of people know, the Lawrenceburg Distillery is on the banks of the Ohio River, just opposite Kentucky. So for all intents and purposes, you could almost say
it's a Kentucky.
Right, very close. Same style, ex-Seagram's distillery, just like Four Roses, and a lot of other great distilleries. So very similar style. And they produced this 95% rye, 5% malted barley mash bill that at the time was unheard of in the United States for a rye whiskey. Today, there's lots of pure ryes. But at the time, nobody was really drinking or even distilling much rye.
Right.
And the distilleries that were in Kentucky were making, more of a Kentucky-style rye with
like 51%.
51%, right. So it immediately struck me as, wow, this is the old style that Pepper used to make, number one. Number two, it just tasted phenomenal. And so I was very fortunate to work with them. So,
yeah. I mean, that's very cool. Well, thank you for bringing this. This is quite a thrill because it's like a Dusty. You said this has been open for a while, so
this one's about 2/3 full. So it's been open for a little. I don't have many of these left. They're gold wax top.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing, it's 15 years old, bottled at cask strength, and it is about 91 proof cask strength. It's 45.65% alcohol.
Do you know what they were barreling this at?
So
any idea?
They were going in, I'm assuming, I didn't work with them in the 90s, but I'm fairly certain it was 120 proof. But they have these large old masonry warehouses. And if they age it on the very bottom levels, they were losing proof on those barrels.
Okay, yeah. That makes a lot of sense. So I just went in for the first thing I got was just mint. Like instantly, there's just this wonderful kind of minty sweetness that comes with that on the nose. But man, and it's 90 proof. It noses just sweet and I don't want to say light, but there's like almost a brown sugary type of aroma to it as well.
Yeah.
But that combination of mint that's in there, some of the baking spices, but that's not as prevalent to me as what that mint that stands out and that sweetness as well.
Yeah.
Almost like a wintergreen type of gum or something like that.
Yeah, I can see that.
Where it's like your mom's purse you used to get in there.
You're doing pretty good without Matt being here, Mark.
I was going to say, like, I don't have anybody to throw it to, so it's like, God.
Yeah, I get all those notes, a little bit of like, candied orange peel almost.
Yeah, I can see that.
And I do think this is going to, I just opened it, so I think it's going to breathe nicely,
so
as it
it'll
opens
open up a little bit. Yeah, but that's really nice. I can't wait to get to the palate and the finish on this, which we'll get to here in just a few minutes. But man, I could sit here and nose this for a while, man. That's crazy. So the 1776 brand, that was your first brand, right? I mean, we've talked about the history, and I don't want to go rehash everything, but just kind of refresh my memory.
So before I got in the bourbon business, I worked, I went to college in California, worked in the wine business a little bit, and then I had worked in the Irish whiskey business.
You had the trade paper, didn't you? You wrote a...
It was a little wine magazine called Wine and Dine Santa Barbara. I went to college in UCSB.
Yeah.
And pretty much everyone who lives there is either a broke college kid or a billionaire. And I was definitely not the latter. And I had worked in restaurants and bars my whole life. And I got into the wine country out there. There's some great wineries. And I started to publish a little rinky-dink wine magazine. Came out 4 times a year on newsprint. We put it for free in hotels. And I think people probably use it more to start fires than read it. But at 25, I was the publisher of Wine and Dine Santa Barbara. And
it's good on a resume, right?
Very good, and all of a sudden people thought I was this, impressive wine connoisseur.
Right.
I didn't want people to know that a couple years before I was drinking Mad Dog 2020, but nonetheless, I really furthered my palate for all things food and drink, and then worked in the Irish whiskey business a little bit. And so that was before I discovered the Pepper brand and embarked on this journey to relaunch it almost 20 years ago.
Yeah, which is crazy, man. It's it's been, what was it, 2008, around that time?
Yeah, 2007, 2008.
Yeah.
And the first distillery I actually worked with was Corsair Artisan at their Bowling Green facility, which I think is closed today.
Are those the same from down in Nashville?
Yeah, same guys.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, one of the early pioneers in the craft distilling space. And, you know, at the time, I had the old pepper mash bill, and I was looking for a distillery to work with. And it was harder back then to find a partner. And I didn't have the money to build a distillery, and no bank would loan it to me. And our distillery project to rebuild the one here in Lexington was you know, years down the pipeline. And so I was on one of these online chat forums, was it Bourbon Enthusiast or, you know, something in the forums, trying to find somebody. And, you know, Chuck Cowdery, I'm posting about how do I do this, and Chuck Cowdery sending me notes. And then one of the guys from Corsair was kind and said, hey, we just opened up this little pot still facility in Bowling Green, and we'd work with you on that. And I was like, man, that's so cool. I was like, I'll be there next week. And I went down, and you know, Andrew from Corsair was really kind, and we worked together. It was just really more for fun. We didn't make a lot. And it was great because I actually have an old Peay family cemetery in Butler County, Kentucky. And it's not too far from there. So outside of Bowling Green. So I got to go see where I think it's like third great grandfather Thomas
You're
Jefferson.
You're a big history guy, man.
I love history. Sorry if I go off.
No, that's all right. I know you're a big history guy, so
I love it. But yeah, so that was then when I really wanted to accelerate and get the James E. Pepper brand going more. I wanted to find a bigger distillery partner to work with, and the Lawrenceburg Distillery ended up being that partner.
Gotcha. Very cool, man. And that's cool. The name itself, 1776. What's the significance on that?
So James E. Pepper. Well, so the legend and lore of the Pepper family is that Elijah Pepper began distilling in 1780 during the American Revolution. Probably that would have been in Virginia where they lived. You know, at that time, Virginia, Kentucky, what is now Kentucky, was part of Virginia.
Right.
And so James E. Pepper, you know, used to fondly, you know, call the brand Old 1776 as an homage to his grandfather. So that's why
I couldn't remember. I know you probably told us this story before on the first round, but our first episode. But I was like trying to remember what it was. So.
I got too many historical stories. We should talk modern stuff and whiskey, but
but no, that's great. I mean, that's what I always admired about you, is the fact that you really dug into the history and spent so much time, and you've spent so much time, and the website is really dedicated to that, and a distillery to some extent as well, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just really cool that you took the time to do that. But that's awesome that you were able to connect with them, with LBI.
It was a different era. I will tell you some points of reference for how different it was then versus today. So I was also, you know, big into bourbon. And so I remember I used to go to the Montgomery County, Maryland liquor stores, and I would, you know, we were selling at that time, the antique collection from Buffalo Trace was $54.95 a bottle. And if you bought a case, a 3-bottle case, you got a 10% discount. So I was buying cases of George T. Stagg for $40-something a bottle. I still have a bunch.
Isn't that crazy?
It's crazy. And, you know, I'm still at heart a fanboy. The other day I was in a Virginia ABC store, and they had Blanton's, Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, and Eagle Rare 10, all at great prices. So, of course, I had to buy it. But, I mean, you know.
Yeah. I do that, too. You know, Liquor Barn's a sponsor, but I'll go up there quite often, have great lunch. I go up there, sit at the deli. And the other day they had Blanton's out, and I'm like, I don't need Blanton's. I've probably got like 8 bottles of Blanton's sitting here, but people love it. And I love to be able to give a gift.
Sure.
And that's the type of gift most people that aren't, nothing wrong with Blanton's, but at the same time, it's such a unique bottle.
Yes.
And it's like people see it as a very high-end, very nice bourbon gift.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, I may not drink it, but I know somebody out there would love to have that. So there's still part of me. I still do that, right?
Yeah. If you see it, I'm not going to pay some crazy markup, but if I see it at a reasonable price, and you know, I also feel a little, you know, our distillery, James E. Pepper, was an old Shenley plant. We have all the old mash bills. We used to run George T. Stagg at our distillery. So we have those mash bills when they were running them there. And I think for a point of time, Buffalo Trace wasn't called Buffalo Trace then. I think it was H&H. They were running James E. Pepper. So there's some crossover. But, you know, there was that. And then the barrels I paid, so just to look at the bulk, you know, the industry market, I think I paid $750 for each barrel of the 15-year-old rye and bourbon I bought from them.
That's crazy.
It was crazy. And,
man,
you know, it was a different time. And so it's been really interesting and rewarding to see, like, to watch the industry and the business evolve over all these years.
And we're going to talk about that in the third round. Because I respect what you've done and the way you've done it. And and I love the brands here in Lexington, but there's not a whole lot of true distillers that are here that are running distilleries. And you're one of the guys that has done it for a long time. And so I admire what you've done and respect that. And I appreciate your insight. And I can't wait for the third round really to jump in to that and get more of your thoughts on stuff.
I love this industry. I've dedicated almost the last 20 years of my life to it. Yeah. And it's been very good to me. I've been very fortunate.
It's like the old SNL, was it Saturday Night Live? Baseball has been the very, very, do you remember that?
No, I don't. What?
Yeah, it was back from the 70s, man. You're too young to remember that.
All right,
anyway,
I was a little too young.
I'll have to show you that clip, man, so you can just say, bourbon has been very, very good to me.
It has been very, very good to me. And it's just like, I love the industry. I love drinking bourbon, but just the people you get to work with, from, the distillers and the producers, podcasters yourself, people who are enthusiasts, but also distributors, retailers, consumers. I mean, it's such a great, fun, exciting industry and business. And so, for me, it'll be like have this journey and experience, and to make a living, and,
to be able to you're very passionate about it, and to be able to make a living doing what you're passionate about. I don't think there's anything better in this world. I mean, because I'm passionate about this, I can't make a living at it just yet. But it keeps me going, I mean, it really does. So I get that. And you've got much broader experience in terms of the people you deal with. For us, we're very fortunate because we get people like you, we get distillers, we get owners. We don't see a lot of other people in the industry. But that's always a common answer. I always ask people, what's their favorite part of the industry? And it's like the people. Like at every side of it, almost every, it doesn't matter if it's people in the distillery, people outside of the distillery, people they just work with, people, like you said, distributors, et cetera, just people that are involved in the industry. It just makes it such a great place to work.
There's not a lot of industries like this anymore, where it's really relationships driven. And I've worked with, the same distributors for, well over a decade. I still go personally work trade shows and pour. I do work with, I drive around with salespeople. I call on accounts.
That's awesome.
Because, A, I enjoy it, and B, what better way to really understand what's going on in the industry, to be out there, not at a desk just reading things, but to really be out there, and see what's going on. So
I think that's great. I mean, you're connected to your business, and that's important, because a lot of people, some people get into this industry with the exit strategy already in mind, and I'm not saying there's necessarily anything wrong with that,
right?
But I think the people that, like you, that are passionate about it, that have built something from ground zero into what it is today. I mean, it's admirable, man. It's a very unique thing, and the fact that this industry still affords people that opportunity to do that, I think is pretty unique, because it's not easy to do.
It's not easy, and it's getting harder. I mean, I was very fortunate to get into it when I did. I think, look, we have a great brand, a great historic distillery, a phenomenal team of people who run the distillery and the entire operation. And so I'm just one cog in this wheel that's made everything work well. So it's not all about me. Yeah.
It still blows my mind, because I went back and listened to some of the first and the second show, because you were a guest before. I forgot to say that. You were a guest on episode 106 and 212. Two-time guest before.
And what episode is this going to be? What number?
This will be 246.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, and I forgot what I was going to ask you there after I.
Sorry, it threw you off there,
right,
man.
See, I'm already drinking, man. So I'll maybe it'll pop back in my head, and I'll remember that. So the 1776. This is the old one, but that's still, you still released the 1776.
Yeah. So we're really proud. We distill, for about 2 years ago, the whiskey in 1776 rye. Became 100% our distillate from the distillery in Lexington.
Awesome.
We made a subtle shift, from that 95.5 to make it 100% rye in the mash bill.
Okay.
But other than that, we really wanted, because we had so many people who love this whiskey, lots of great bars who have it in the cocktail programs. We weren't really trying to dramatically reinvent it. We wanted to make a subtle shift to to be really true to the roots of the brand, also to improve quality and flavor, but incrementally. So we really want to be in the same ballpark, flavor profile wise.
So is that, you say 100? Is it any part of it malted rye, or is it just all rye?
We use a little bit of malted rye.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Gotcha.
And so it's nobody really missed a beat in terms of any flavor shift. We don't think there was any big flavor shift, and it's still one of our best-selling whiskeys, and we think the flavor is phenomenal. And not just us. I think recently at the Fred Minnick's Ascot Awards, the 76 rye, which you can buy for $29.99 a store, won a double platinum.
That's wild, dude.
Up against some pretty heavy-hitting brands.
Yeah. I mean, I know Fred. I know I've never been a judge for that, but I know people that have, and I know there's a huge amount of whiskey that gets submitted for that, man.
Yeah.
So to be able to pull a double platinum is it's pretty amazing, man.
Yeah,
it's got to make you feel good.
We feel good about it, and I think what I love about 76 rye is that it's this. I'm a guy who spent a lot of years working as a bar back and a bartender, and I was a much better bar back than bartender. I'm better at manual labor than finesse work.
Than face work. Yeah, I get you. Yeah.
And so I love that 76 rye is sort of a workhorse in bar programs where people can have it at a bar and drink it neat, and it's a beautiful pour of whiskey. But also it's just a workhorse for cocktails. So that 100% rye mash bill, and then the way we produce it is sort of this old Seagram's method that's very complicated to produce. It's very tricky, very susceptible to bacterial contamination, but it results in a really rich flavor profile. A lot of those herbaceous, minty, cloves, eucalyptus notes are still there. Or really emphasized. And so when you make a classic cocktail like an Old Fashioned or a Manhattan or a Boulevardier, it really shines in that cocktail. You got it.
That's the problem, I think, with bourbon, because I've switched over to using rye when I make an Old Fashioned, just because, when you have bourbon, you get that sweetness from it, that corn sweetness and the caramel and the vanilla, and then you add simple syrup on it, and you put a cherry in there, and then before you know it, it's just like a sugar bomb. It's like, this isn't what I want to drink. I want to be able to taste my alcohol in my cocktail.
100%.
I think that makes perfect sense.
Well, that's the only cocktail we make at the distillery is the Old Fashioned. We make the Old Fashioned in honor of James E. Pepper and his role in that cocktail, and we make the old recipe from the Waldorf cocktail book from the pre-Prohibition era, and the whiskey we use is 76 rye. So.
That's awesome, man. How cool is that to be able to say, I make my cocktails with my own rye, like my own, like my rye. It's my rye.
Right? It's our rye. I mean, Cody and everyone at the Distillery, they make it. I mean, there's a reason I'm on the road a lot doing work with, because I'm a better salesman than distiller. I'm not even a distiller at all. I'm very involved in what we make and the style we make, and I can have in-depth conversations about it.
Sure.
But the distilling team is at the helm of the ship.
Yeah, and we had Cody on last time with us. So go back if you guys haven't checked out that episode. It's just in March of this year. But Cody Gallahue, right?
Yeah, Cody Giles.
Giles. Oh, I knew that. Yeah, Cody Giles.
You did it. You just did. You did the L was silent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, I got you. But my bad.
No, it's like in Kentucky. It's not Versailles, man. Come on, you know. Yeah.
I get it. Yeah. But he's a good guy. I mean, I enjoyed having him on the show, man, for sure. So I was going to ask you, in terms of the awards, what does that mean to you as an owner? Personally, what does it mean to you? But also, from the aspect of the brand itself, what does that mean to you?
I think it's validating for myself and the distilling team. And I think, look, there's so many award shows today.
Yeah.
Sometimes, at a certain point, everybody gets a gold and double gold or whatever, right?
Right.
There's a few that I think people look at with a lot of respect, and that comes down to the people who run and organize the shows. I think, Fred Minnick and the Ascot Awards is there. People who have, honor and integrity in terms of how they taste and what they taste and how they rate things, and then the panel of judges they put together. And then also the level of competition, like who's submitting,
sure,
right? And so I think if you look at certain shows, San Francisco to New York, these are shows that have great operations. They have great judge panels. They have a lot of serious competition, and so when you really do well there, I think it's all blind. I mean, it's
that's
pretty,
the thing. That it's blind, so they have no idea what they're tasting, other than it's a rye from Kentucky or a rye from wherever or whatever.
Right.
So, which is cool. So, you wonder, because you do hear about people, I won this award, and sometimes it's like, I won this award from the Eastern Carolina, Pumpkin Patch Festival, and
Yeah.
it's like, oh, okay, well, that's cool. I mean, you won an award, that's cool.
Right.
But you wonder, what does that impact-wise, for the brand? Is it something that you're like, oh, this is awesome? But yeah, the Ascot Awards, obviously, it's in that upper echelon, top tier type of program. So
and I think we're being very selective about how we've submitted consistently over the years and won a lot of awards. But I think we're starting to pull back a little bit on that.
Yeah.
Just because, again, there are so many competitions. And I think it's, we just want people to try the whiskey.
Sure.
Just try it. Try it at a tasting event, try it at one of these whiskey festivals, try it at the distillery, see what you think.
Speaking of which, let's jump back to the whiskey and talk about the palate and the finish. The first thing, again, kind of jumps out to me. The mint comes through still on the palate to me. That sweetness comes through almost, again, to me, it's like that brown sugary sweetness. I know you'd mentioned the candied orange. Maybe there's a hint of the citrus in there, possibly.
Yeah.
It's not. I don't know that it's as prevalent to me on the palate and the finish as it was in the nose. Once you said that, though, it was like, oh, there it is. But then in tasting it on the palate, I'm looking for it. I'm like, yeah, there's a hint, but maybe not as much. I would not want to mix this particular 15-year-old in a cocktail,
no,
at all. But this is, this is really nice. I mean, this is, it's got spiciness as well. You get that rye feeling, that rye spice that comes through.
Right.
But, I get that mintiness, but also some spices. I get that tongue tingle, and I love that. Even at 90 proof, I just get that rye effect.
Yeah.
And for me, sometimes when I drink just certain ryes, I get that after. It's almost like I've had mouthwash in my mouth, and it's like you almost get that cooling effect when you breathe in, that mintiness. I really, really like that. So anything else? What about you? What do you get?
I think you nailed all the points. I don't think I can add anything to this.
You can't do that, man. It's
I can't. I mean, I'm enjoying it. I'll tell you that much.
We need to dial Matt's over in Hawaii. It's 6 hours. He's 6 hours behind, right? So we
could have. I should have FedExed some
things
samples
over. Yeah, he could have just called in, right? So, well, man, we are already at the end of round one. I mean, I don't know how that happened. That was pretty quick. That was crazy fast, man. So why don't we take a quick break? We'll get a word from our sponsors, and we'll be back with more with Amir Peay with James E. Pepper Distillery in just a minute. Welcome to Old Dominick Distillery, a family-owned craft distillery nestled in the heart of downtown Memphis. Founded by descendants of Domenico Canali, a pioneering Sicilian immigrant who made Memphis his home in the late 1800s, Old Dominick is steeped in history and tradition. Old Dominick prides itself on offering a diverse selection of whiskeys to satisfy every taste. Whether you're a seasoned connoisseur or a curious newcomer, you'll find something to love, including an 85 proof Tennessee whiskey, bonded Tennessee whiskey, a single barrel Tennessee whiskey, a 90.1 proof bourbon, and coming this fall, a cask strength bourbon. Each bottle of Old Dominick whiskey is crafted with care, featuring unique mash bills that offer a variety of high and low proofs. This dedication to quality ensures there's a perfect pour for every whiskey enthusiast. Old Dominick whiskeys are proudly distributed in several states, including Tennessee, Kentucky, Missouri, Georgia, Arkansas, Illinois, and Mississippi. Can't find us locally? No problem. You can conveniently purchase our products online and have them delivered straight to your doorstep. Ready to explore the world of Old Dominick? Visit our website at olddominick.com to learn more about our history, discover our products, and find a retailer near you. Visit the historic James E. Pepper Distillery, located in the vibrant Distillery District in downtown Lexington, Kentucky. Initially built in 1880 by Colonel James E. Pepper, one of the founding fathers of the bourbon industry, it operated until 1967 when it was shut down and abandoned for over 50 years. After a decade of historical research, the brand was relaunched and the distillery was rebuilt. Distilling resumed on-site in 2017, using the same historic bourbon recipe as when it closed in 1967. The distillery offers a selection of fine whiskeys for tasting and retail purchases, including the award-winning Decanter Bourbon. Intimate guided tours include time in the museum, an up-close look at the grain-to-glass process, and a complimentary tasting. Stop by for an old-fashioned cocktail and see why TripAdvisor ranks the Pepper Distillery as the third best distillery in Kentucky and the #1 attraction in Lexington. Learn more at jamesepepper.com. All right, everybody, welcome back for round 2 of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and sadly, my co-host, Matt, is not with me here tonight in the Bourbon Life Studios, otherwise known as my basement. Matt is in Hawaii preparing for the World Championship Ironman in Kona right now, so good luck to him on Saturday. But we're thrilled that you guys stopped by to check us out and listen to the episode. Even without Matt and his excellent top-notch tasting notes, we're doing our best that we can without him tonight. But we are the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by Liquor Barn. We appreciate their support. We appreciate the support of all of our sponsors. We couldn't bring you this show every week without those wonderful sponsors that we have. With that said, I'm going to introduce our guest. He is a repeat guest, a three-peat actually, previously on the episode 106 and episode 212. It's Amir Peay, the owner-operator from the James E. Pepper Distillery right here in Lexington. We've been on a Lexington theme this month. That was our goal. We wanted to get guys and gals in from Lexington, and you're one that we always want to have on when we're talking Lexington distilleries, man. So welcome back, Amir.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, and always love having you join us here. I'm glad you're close by. You can come out and hang out with us, man. So, or hang out with me tonight, not us, but I always enjoy that. So that's great. All right, man. So you brought some other stuff for us.
Yes, sir.
I'm excited about this one. I love this one.
Well, we are drinking what is now one of our favorite whiskeys, the James E. Pepper Decanter Bourbon. This was released in October of last year, all distilled at the historic James E. Pepper Distillery in Lexington. A blend of different bourbon distillates that we distill all there and blend together for a flavor profile that we desire. And bottle of cask strength. This batch is 52.7% alcohol. So what is that?
104. Wait. 52 what?
52.7. Sorry, we're bad at math.
1044.
1044.
Yeah, I was off on that one.
So we do a pretty low barrel entry proof.
1054.
Yeah. So we do 1054.
I even wrote that down before we started, man.
That was a 15-year rye creeping up on us.
Wow, that's a creeper, isn't it?
Yeah.
1054.
1054.
Yeah.
And so really just a very nice, I don't say easy drinking, but because of the low barrel entry proof and the low cask strength, it's a nice sipper with a lot of flavor to it.
So what do you go in the barrel at on your bourbons?
We go in between 107 and 110 for our bourbons.
So really no proof loss on that.
No.
Hardly. I mean, very, very, very little, right?
Very little.
Yeah, I mean that's great. I remember this came out and I talked about this on the last show, but because you had it at the Bourbon on the Banks, and Chad, our good buddy, My Daily Bourbon, who sits in with us sometimes, he was just going nuts. He's like, "Have you guys had this? You got to go down. You got to buy a bunch of bottles. You got to get this stuff." I mean, he was absolutely thrilled by it. So we got to taste it at Bourbon on the Banks in 23, and you guys were gracious enough to send us a bottle, which I've sipped on, share it with only the people that appreciate fine bourbon.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and the decanter is beautiful as well, and we talked about that on the last show. But man, it stands out. And my wife even comments every time she sees that bottle, like if I have it upstairs or whatever, if she comes downstairs and she sees it, she's like, "Oh my God, that's such a beautiful bottle!" Like every time she sees that.
Thank you. That's great to hear, and I wish we could take all this credit for designing this bottle, but it was a bottle that was created and designed and and sold at the Pepper Distillery in the 1940s.
Yeah.
And so it was with over 140 years of packaging inspiration, and to look over that one bottle to me always just stood out as being very elegant and distinct, but also sort of sturdy.
Yeah.
And kind of timeless looking. Some of these decanters from that era were a little gimmicky looking, but this one to me kind of just reminded me almost like a Glencairn glass.
Oh yeah.
Like again, elegant, sophisticated, but sturdy.
Yeah.
And so it's
not one you're going to have in the well at the bar.
No, not for sure, not in the well, but it is.
It's going to be on the back shelf.
I always like to point out this is not a limited release or a special release. This is our flagship bourbon. This is our #1 selling bourbon. Unfortunately, we don't have enough of it. We can't keep it in stock, but it's we target $64.99 on a retail shelf, and
which is crazy.
Some retailers will have it at $59.99. And we're okay with that because we want this to be one that people drink every day.
Yeah.
If you want to make a cocktail, go ahead. Drink it on a Wednesday, or in our case, on a Tuesday night.
On a Tuesday night, that's right. Whenever. Now, several of us ranked this as one of our top 5 bourbons from 2023.
Awesome.
And we get the opportunity to taste a lot of bourbons, which is fortunate for us. But there were several of us last year that were just like, this is definitely one of the top. Just, not just the taste and the profile, but the pricing and the availability. I mean, that's huge as well. And you can find this, you could, now that it's become so popular, right? It's like, kind of funny. We'll talk more about that, but let's talk about the nose. And the one thing I remember from last year when we were talking, or earlier this year, when we talked about this has, and I know this is right around probably what, 5.5, 6 maybe?
Yes.
Okay. It just seems like it has an older flavor profile to me. I remember the last time we talked about it, and it was just like, I was picking up like, you get those classic bourbon notes, And it doesn't nose at 105 at all. I mean, this is, we just nose that 90 proofer. And this, to me, it doesn't nose any stronger than that, which is crazy to think that. Yeah. But the nose is very nice. I get those delicious bourbon notes. I get a little hint of oak, and before I got leather, which was kind of crazy on a younger bourbon. And maybe I'm just thinking that in my head, but when I say like it has the older nose to it, that's one of those notes that kind of stood out to me as well. But you get a lot of those classic bourbon notes. There's nothing that stands out that is like out of place or out of balance. There's nothing, the corn doesn't stand out like, hey, it's a young grainy. The ethanol, there's no ethanol aroma to it. It's just a very pleasant, a little bit of light oak on it. The sweetness, some stone fruit. If Matt was here, Matt would always say stone fruit, right? So I'm like, what would Matt say? I'm like, but no, I mean, I do get stone fruit.
Do you get any peach or apricot notes?
Yeah, that's what peach and apricot, right? That's Matt. Nectarine, no. I don't know enough about nectarines to be able to say that, that tastes like a, but I still, go ahead.
I was going to say, I don't know about stone fruit. I couldn't, peaches and nectarines I can talk. But.
Well, I mean, I think like cherries, stuff like that. When with the pits, plum, stuff like that. I'm thinking
fruit,
like a darker,
okay.
I'm thinking of the darker stone, but not like a peach or anything like that, but I'd like a cherry or a dark cherry. And even that darker sugar type of note again comes through on this one for me. Some of those spices, like a baking spice as well, maybe.
Sure.
That comes through. Anything that stands out to you on this?
Nutmeg in there, Again, dried fruits.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit of butterscotch.
Man, it's just so nice.
Thank you.
You can nose this. I mean, we'll come back and talk about the palate and the finish as well. But definitely one of our favorites from last year, and still a favorite, and so happy because I remember when I got this bottle and I was almost disappointed because I thought, oh man, this is like a one-time release, until you're like, nope, it's gonna be like all the time. I'm like, that's awesome.
Yeah, no, this is our flagship bourbon.
Yeah.
And it was always designed to be like that.
Yeah. So did you have any idea, that it was gonna take off and be what this has become? Because this has become huge. So
thank
did you anticipate that?
No, I hoped.
You
but
hope, right.
I will just say, we were obsessed with just trying to make the best bourbon we can, right? So,
sure.
You start from day one and you don't cut any corners, and you just ask yourself, you learn from great, master distillers who've accumulated knowledge for decades, and then you look at what other people have done successful, and just at every part, whether it's your water, your grain source, your cooking and fermentation process, yeast, how you distill, to the cooperage, every little part you just say, just make the best decision, right? So don't cut any corners, only Kentucky oak, air season minimum of 18 to 24 months. And, I could go on and on for everything we do and why we made that decision. But again, you just don't know until 5 years later. And so it's a little nerve-wracking, when you're somebody that's borrowed a lot of money from banks and put up personal guarantees, and your whole life is kind of on the line. You're like, God, I really hope it comes out well. But all you can do is just have a great team, make all those good decisions, and then when it comes out and it tastes great, it's very rewarding. And so we knew we were loving it the whole time. But I think it was really... it's just a great feeling when people such as yourself and other people were like saying that they loved it and liked it. I mean, I think with us, we're kind of under the radar a little bit. We don't do a lot in terms of advertising or promotion and marketing. We're relatively small compared to the really big producers. So we just are nose down, work hard, try to make great whiskey, try to honor the history of the brand. And so just to see people react is great.
Well, I know Matt's going to be sad that he's not here, and you're here with your, because I know he loves he always just talks about how great you guys, everything you guys put out, he loves it for sure. So I know he's going to be jealous.
Yeah, well, he came by and spent some time when we were running single malt at the distillery.
Oh, that's right, because we had the single malt last
100%.
time. That's right. And I had not been much of a fan, but yeah, man, I was like, that's not. I shouldn't say I'm not a fan of single malt. It's just because I think when I think single malt, I think Scotch, and when I think Scotch, I think peat, and there's just like trigger in my head. It's like, oh no. But these American single malts that are coming out, I'm starting to enjoy them, starting to appreciate them. It is a different profile.
Yeah.
And it was funny, even with, Town Ranch with Dave Bob, and we were tasting some of their stuff, and he's got like 15% malted barley in there. And you can really tell, and I'm like, it's a different note for me. Right. It's not what I'm used to drinking. But I remember your single malt. I was like, yeah, I really like, because there was a little bit of peat to that, wasn't there?
A little bit, just a little bit.
And I like that. I mean, it was just a hint. And it was like, yeah, this is good.
Yeah.
But I forgot that Matt had done that, man. So he's a fanboy.
He's a fanboy. I mean, we're a fanboy. I love single malt, and I love seeing it's just sort of really interesting times in American single malt because everyone is kind of all over the place in terms of profile and styles and how they produce it.
Right.
And so it's kind of fun to be in this Wild West era of American single malt and see who creates really great styles and flavors. I know we're having a lot of fun with it and doing different things. And we don't have it's just something we have fun with every year.
Yeah.
And then we don't have one this is it. No, it's always a sort of evolving thing. Now we've dialed in a little bit on it, but it's fun for us, and I really enjoy single malt.
Yeah. Well, we talked about before you came over last week. We were on the phone talking a little bit, talking about Lexington in general, the Lexington distilleries and things. So let's kind of shift focus a little bit. Since this month we're really trying to focus on Lexington brands. You guys have been around. The brand started in 2008. Now, when did you start actually releasing product? Was it that early, or was it
shortly thereafter?
Okay, so you've been releasing stuff for quite a while. So 15, 16-ish years, something like that. Quite a while. So you're a longtime player in the Lexington market, which is great.
I mean, I guess for what we've been doing compared to obviously the legends in the industry, I'm just a little baby, coming up on 2 decades, but yeah.
But still, I mean, you think about it in terms of Lexington distilleries.
Sure.
I mean, you've got Lexington Brewing and Distilling Down Branch, which is just celebrating their 25th anniversary, which in the grand scheme of things isn't really that long, you know. And Bluegrass Distillers here as well, who they're not that old, moving out to Midway, unfortunately, as well.
Right.
So I feel like Lexington's kind of losing them somewhat. And there's a lot of great brands that are popping up here in Lexington, and I appreciate what they're doing. But as far as actual distillers, Barrel House is downtown as well. Can you just talk a little bit about the marketplace here in Lexington, though? I mean, what you've been here for a while doing this, what you see, advantages, disadvantages for, distilleries in the brand?
Well, so first of all, obviously, I'm a huge fan of Lexington, pro Lexington.
Right.
I love the city. It's such an amazing city when you look at the city itself, the downtown, just look at the restaurants, the hotels, the culture of people, and then, of course, the horse country around Lexington, which is its DNA. And as somebody who didn't grow up in Lexington, I love bringing people here who aren't from Kentucky, or bringing a partner, or distributor, somebody from California, New York, and maybe they haven't even been to Kentucky, and just having that, seeing that through their eyes, and getting to introduce them to not only Kentucky but Lexington. And specifically, people come to Kentucky for the first time and they just think Churchill Downs and Kentucky Derby, and they assume that's. And I always love to tell them, well, Lexington. I was like, well, 80% of the horses that race in the Derby and win it, they live on farms in Lexington.
It's like, come on, we're the bourbon capital of the world.
This is where all the horse
farms. The horse capital.
Yes, horse capital of the world. We have the rolling hills of the bluegrass. When you look at Keeneland, it is just such a beautiful track.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
It just looks like it's right out of central casting in a movie, and Churchill Downs is very cool, but it's a different, bigger, more urban.
Sure.
And so I think it's just this really cool mix of the horse country and bourbon. And then in terms of bourbon, the history of central Kentucky, the bluegrass region in Lexington and distilling Kentucky is very significant, obviously. I mean, just look at, James E. Pepper.
Right.
Look at the Pepper family, Elijah, Oscar. Look at what is today Woodford Reserve. That was the original Pepper distillery. The inner bluegrass region, is an actual, there's people call Kentucky, and again, for everyone in Kentucky, sorry if I'm over-explaining, but for people who aren't here, they call Kentucky the bluegrass, but really there's a region called the inner bluegrass region. And that's a defined region that has karst a lot of karst under the ground, and that's why the grass here grows really lush and green and is full of calcium and minerals. And the horses eat this grass and get really strong bones. And so that's why all the horse farms are here.
Right.
And for that same reason is why you make great whiskey in this region.
Yeah.
The water gets filtered through that limestone, through that karst. It removes iron and other metals that are bad for fermentation. It adds calcium and minerality, which is good for fermentation and flavor. And so there's a whole story about, provenance and authenticity just for making whiskey here. And in terms of operating the distillery, I mean, I feel very lucky sometimes things have just worked out the way they did, right? And so the fact that James E. Pepper built his distillery in downtown Lexington was an amazing thing for us to operate a distillery, because we have obviously Keeneland and horse country. We have UK, and we have a really cool city with lots going on. So for us to be downtown and to have a very cool distillery with a museum and a great tour operation, since day one, we've just had a phenomenal reception and great reviews and ratings. I can tell you we've been a top-rated attraction in the city of Lexington on TripAdvisor for a number of years, and I'll do a little humble brag right now on behalf of the whole team and the retail operation, the tour guides. TripAdvisor published an article last year, 2023, the best distillery tours in the entire state of Kentucky by Traveler ranking. And we came in third in the entire state after only Buffalo Trace and Maker's Mark.
I remember that. I remember you telling us that.
And we're an urban distillery. We have parking problems.
Yeah, right.
And so we don't have, a 500-acre estate with a river running through it and, all this stuff.
30 rick houses
30
out
rick
back.
houses out back, And so to me, that just speaks volumes about, people's experience in Lexington, but also at our distillery. Obviously, I think they go in, the museum, they hear a very powerful story.
Yeah.
Then they see a really cool working distillery, with everything you're going to see in the bigger heritage players, just on a smaller scale. And then, of course, we've got really great whiskey that they can buy and try. And then when they walk out and leave our distillery, it's not a 30-minute car ride anywhere. It's like you're here. You're in the middle of the distillery district, which is this hopping place full of restaurants and breweries and distilleries and lots to do, bars, live music. And you're just a short Uber ride from hotels, or if not a walk now. You've got the Manchester Hotel down the street. So I feel great about it. I think, there's some challenges in the city in terms of infrastructure in our little part of the city. I've worked very closely with the city and the city council, and they've all been big supporters. It's a lot to do, and we have been making improvements. So, I think that steadily, incrementally, we are making improvements. We have the Town Branch Trail. There's a lot of other things going on, but it would be great to have more things done and quicker. But yeah.
I mean, from a standpoint, because I think they're like, hey, we're going to come. People from out of state message me, Instagram, Facebook. Hey, we're coming. Should we stay in Louisville? Should we stay in Bardstown? I'm like, well, you could, but you could also stay here. And I think there's something in this mindset that Lexington, like, people don't realize or don't know or don't think, it's like it doesn't come into their mind. Yes, Buffalo Trace is over in Frankfort, about 30 minutes away.
Right.
Versailles has Woodford, 20 minutes away.
Right.
But Lexington, for some reason, just doesn't seem to register still with people. And my mission in life, other than, continuing the Bourbon Life podcast, that is my secondary mission now, is to make Lexington the destination spot.
You can count me as a partner in that mission.
Seriously.
And look, it's obviously we're a little biased, but I think objectively, you just look at it, look at the hotels, look at the restaurants, and look at the Bourbon Trail as a whole. Like, to your point, if you're at Woodford, Wild Turkey or Buffalo Trace, Castle and Key, you're closer to Lexington than Louisville at this point.
You are.
So
That's right.
why, and much closer than Bardstown, why don't you spend the night here? And I think, I've heard it called, it's like the Golden Triangle, right? It's Lexington, Louisville, and Bardstown. If you look on a map, they're all form a triangle. They're all about an hour drive apart. So it doesn't have to be just one city. You can fly into Lexington or Louisville and then fly out of the other. And a lot of the great distilleries are on the road between these three cities and towns. So, so I think...
Yeah, I think I love the fact now, Visit Lex is doing a great job, Bourbon Land, their whole promotional thing, to get the word out there about Lexington, because we are the horse capital of the world. People know that. But people also need to understand that we're also a very big player in the bourbon industry as well.
Agreed.
And want to really just encourage people to come to Lexington and check it out. I mean, I've been here for 38 years. I mean, this is home. I grew up in Eastern Kentucky, was there for 18 years. I've been here for more than double that time I was in Eastern Kentucky.
Right.
So this is home to me now, and I want to see my home do well. And I think we have a lot to offer, and I'm happy that Lexington's a gateway city now. I believe on the Bourbon Trail. I don't know. I'm not sure when that happened, how long ago it was, but I'm happy to see that. That's like, hey, Lexington as a city is a great place to start. Come here, like you said, and you can drive to Buffalo Trace if you wanted to, but you've got a lot of stuff to do here in town, a lot of distilleries, a lot of places to check out. So, stay here, check them out, drive to Woodford, drive back 20 minutes, drive to Buffalo Trace in 30 minutes, drive down to Wild Turkey in 40 minutes. I mean, 100%. There's a lot of different things going on. So I just, I want to see that change, and I'm not sure how to bring that change about.
I think we are. I think it's growing, and I think it's getting on people's radar. And Lexington, I mean, we both see all the accolades. The city, Visit Lex and Chamber of Commerce do a phenomenal job, and it's always making these. I think just a week or two ago, was it Condé Nast did the best 10 small towns in America or cities, best small cities, and Lexington was on the list. Right. And I see this stuff all the time. So, look, I don't think it's a zero-sum game in the sense of Bardstown versus Louisville versus Lexington. I think that they're all distinct. They're great experiences. Sure. Bardstown is more of a town, and it's got this amazing history, and that's bourbon, like them. That's lock, stock, and barrel, right? Yeah. Louisville's the bigger city. It's got more in terms of that. Right. But we have horse country and an amazing history, and we have this unique topography of the rolling hills of the bluegrass that is distinct. So you can enjoy Louisville and Bardstown, but you will not get the things you get in Lexington and those other places.
Not at all.
That's just being, so I
agree. Because you get the big city feel if you want that, but then you also get the country feel if 100%. You want that. You can do that within a matter of 10 minutes, 15 minutes, wherever you are. And we've got the best of things here to do. So yeah, man, we're gonna get off our pedestal now, right? Our high horse.
We're going, well, rightfully so. I mean, we're not, look, we're up there. We're in the game. Yeah.
Well, let's jump back over to this whiskey, man. So this is, you call it is it the barrel strength or barrel proof?
We call it
the
barrel
decanter,
proof.
The decanter.
We call it the decanter, barrel proof.
That's why I was like, I just want to call it the decanter.
Yeah.
So what do you pick? Can I ask you what you get in terms of your palate and finish on this one?
You put me on the spot first here, because you realize I just took everything you said last time and said, it sounds good to me, Mark.
That's quite all right, man. It's like, we're in this together, man. Without Matt, we're both just like two blind guys walking around.
I get apricots. I get dried fruit.
Dried fruits, for sure. You mentioned that on the nose too, but I get it. Definitely get it on this. I get that. Is this a combination of different bourbon mash bills?
It is.
Okay. So do you know where the rye content?
Yeah, it's essentially a high rye bourbon.
I was going to say, because I get that same, we drank that rye earlier, and I still get that rye tingle. Mm-hmm. And it's not the proof, because sometimes high proof can kind of give that same sensation. But this, it's that rye feeling that I get, that spiciness that lingers on the palate, and really, really enjoy it. It's got that sweetness to it as well. And those flavors just play back and forth.
How would you describe, would you call that sweetness like a brown sugar almost?
Brown sugar. I mean, that's what it jumps out to me. That's what I got on the nose. It was like, oh, this is like a brown sugary, sweetness. I was getting a little bit of like cherry as well on that.
Cherry, yeah.
So in the combination, I can taste the corn. I'm trying to think, because I was listening to the episode from last time. And was this the one Matt said funnel cake on? Was this?
He said that on one of them.
Well, I know.
And I remember that's when I was just like, let me take my hat off to you, sir. I was like,
was this? But I was like, I don't get funnel cake on this, but you never know with Matt what he's going to come up with.
I get a little toffee on there, and just, there's a lot going on.
There is. I mean, that's the thing. Again, it drinks to me. Number one, it doesn't drink at 105.4 at all. I mean, it's a little bit higher proof, but it's still just the combination of flavors. It drinks older to me.
What we do, there's some things we do which, in many ways, it's a classic traditional, bourbon, high rye bourbon, and we want to honor that, and we like to do kind of incremental innovation, but really stay true to just classic profiles. But where we're a little different is, everything from our grain sources, which are distinct. We work with one state farmer for all of our corn, grown in Fayette County. Our malted barley source is very unique. No one's using that. Our again, sourced for top flavor. We use a little bit of malted rye in there. And then the cooperage, we're going in very low, but not just to an average whiskey barrel aged, air season 6 months. We're talking 18 to 24 months of air seasoning. And of course, there's toasting. So there's all these little things we do that, again, you're going to taste it and go, there's all these great classic bourbon notes in there, but there's different layers of depth and complexity, I think, that kind of come out.
And to me, it's kind of a throwback to those older bourbons, not just that it tastes older, but I think it's a throwback to just the older style of bourbon as well. So I think like paying homage to Pepper himself through what you've created here.
Well, thank you very much.
It's awesome, man. Let's take a quick break before we get back on the Lexington topic. Take a quick break. We get a word from our sponsors. We'll be back with more with Amir Peay, the owner-operator with James E. Pepper Distillery right here in Lexington, Kentucky, in just a minute.
Hey there, I'm Carrie Van Winkle, founder of Pappy & Company, where we celebrate family heritage and Southern craftsmanship. Check out our curated collection of artisanal goods that embody the spirit of Kentucky. From our signature barrel-aged pepper sauce aged in Pappy Van Winkle bourbon barrels to our luxurious leather goods inspired by generations of tradition, each item reflects our commitment to quality and legacy. Our line of gourmet food items are thoughtfully selected to bring the taste of the South to your table. Indulge in what I can say is the best bourbon barrel-aged maple syrup on the planet. A perfect blend of buttery rich flavors that elevate any dish or cocktail. We're big fans of the Bourbon Life Podcast, and we're honored to share the legacy of our great-grandfather Pappy Van Winkle with all of you. So visit pappyco.com for 15% off your purchase with code BourbonLife15.
Three Chords line of whiskeys embody the spirit of creativity. The whiskey is a true collaboration between producer and composer Neil Giraldo and master blender distiller Ari Sussman. The Three Chord team of expert blenders, coopers, and sensory professionals have developed a multi-step process they called Perfectly Tuned Taste. This process begins by carefully selecting the finest bourbon and rye whiskeys from Kentucky, Tennessee, and Indiana, and then blending them together. Find out more about the whiskeys and distribution in your area at www.threechordbourbon.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back for the third and sadly final round of the Bourbon Life Podcast. I'm your host, Mark, and unfortunately, Matt is not with me tonight here in the Bourbon Life Studios. He's over in Hawaii getting ready for the Ironman World Championship, so good luck to Matt this weekend when he races. But hey, you got me for the night. I'm doing the best I can to keep up on the tasting notes. Miss Matt for sure for his commentary. But we are the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by Liquor Barn. We appreciate their support and the support of all of our sponsors. Couldn't bring you this show every week with great guests that we have without the support of all of our sponsors. With that said, see, this is usually where I say, with that said, Matt, tell everybody who we have with us, but I'll take care of that tonight. We do have Amir Peay. He's the owner-operator of the James E. Pepper Distillery right here in beautiful Lexington, Kentucky. Welcome back, Amir. Thanks for hanging out.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah. Thanks for not leaving.
Of course. Well, I'm happy to be here, and
awesome.
Matt better be careful. I might be trying to give him a run for
co-host.
Man, when he's out of town traveling.
That's right, man. We just bring you in.
Maybe this is an audition.
There you go. This is. I didn't want to tell you that, but now the cat's out of the bag.
Just full disclaimer. Definitely the tasting notes. I can't compete or come in close.
We'll have to figure something out on that, man. We could maybe we just skip that part. Just say it's good.
Yeah. Well, that's about how I do. So.
Well, you got us something here, another third wonderful expression to drink on. Why don't you tell everybody what you brought for this third round?
So we have here a single barrel of bourbon bottled under the Old Pepper label. This is cask strength at 54.5% alcohol, so that's 109.
109, we did the math
even.
earlier,
we did
right?
the math. This one's easier.
Yes.
And so this is going to be hair under 5 years old.
Okay.
But yeah.
Yeah, and your own distillate, right?
Yes,
so,
100%.
Right.
Yes.
Awesome. So now this mash bill, can you say what that was?
So this one is 80% corn,
okay,
12% malted barley, and 8% malted rye.
Huh, really? Okay. Interesting, man. Yeah. So nosing on this one, you get the sweetness. I mean, you do get that corn sweetness. It's not grain forward, but there is a lot of sweetness to this. But I still pick up rye, even though there's not a lot to it. I still get some rye spice off of this. I'm on a brown sugar kick, man. It's just
I get that. Yeah.
I'm like everything tonight has been like brown sugar to me. But man, there's just that sugary sweetness, and it comes across just as a nice, rich brown sugar, like you just open the bag, you know, and you get that whiff of that brown sugary sweetness, and that definitely comes off on this. I get, you know, it's funny because sometimes, and it's a lot of time on rye, but I think one of the other expressions we had before from you guys, I got like this, I talked about the Tops bubble gum.
You just took the word. Now, I was going to say bubble gum.
Okay.
You took it from, but no, it's I get it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
almost, I was going to say it's like brown sugar bubble gum.
Yeah.
Because that's
funny. Yeah. So I definitely get that, man. So anything else that stands out on that? See, we did pretty good so far.
We did pretty good there.
Yeah.
I think brown sugar bubble gum is pretty.
Brown sugar bubble gum. Take that, Matt.
Take that, Matt.
He's like, I never listened to the podcast. So
yeah,
you know,
I think that's pretty on point.
Yeah, I think we did really well. So we're going to shift gears a little bit, man. We're going to talk about the industry. This is fun because, you know, usually we don't have these types of conversations, but I think it's important to get a feel. And I respect you for what you do. And you're always, I feel like you got your finger on the pulse of the market because you are out there. You are, like you said earlier, you're going out, you're meeting with clients, you're meeting with these brands, you're meeting with distributors, you're meeting with, you know, different retailers, and you kind of can see what's going on in the marketplace. So, you know, the thing that people ask me all the time when they find out I do a podcast, the question is always, are we on a bubble? Has the bubble burst? I mean, is it over? Is bourbon, you know, what's going to happen, man? So I'll ask you the same question. I mean, are we in a bubble? Are we on the bubble? Is the bubble bursting, or what do you think?
Well, no, I would not in any way call it a bubble that's going to burst.
Okay.
And I think that look, no one has a crystal ball, right? So who knows? I remember, you know, back talking about the 15-year-old rye barrels and this and that, like not wanting to buy too much because I was nervous that no one's going to buy it. And anyway,
$750 a barrel.
Yes.
Wow.
And so I've been waiting not for the bubble to burst for all these years, but like just when is the other shoe going to drop? You know.
Sure.
And I think that the category in the market continues to just, you know, surpass expectations.
Yeah.
But, you know, there are cycles and no one knows, and everything can't just go up and to the right forever, right?
Sure.
And so I think it's hard to say, like, I wouldn't say this is going to happen definitively, but I think you can look at data and information and you can make a bullish case and a bearish case about things. Look, I definitely spend a lot of time in the market. And again, I'm a consumer. I'm a fan. You look at my whiskey collection, it's bourbons. It's also single malts and Japanese whiskeys. And I go in the store and I buy bottles.
Yeah.
So when we put out a bottle of whiskey, that's the lens I look at it. I've said for a lot of years, you can talk to my distributor partners, I say, you know, people looked at the decanter and they said, that should be $100 bottle, $150.
Right.
And I said, no, like this is a good price for it. We're making a healthy margin, we're fine. And I think that's a fair price for it. And again, I want it to be a whiskey that's not one in a collection. I want people to drink it all the time.
Sure.
And I would always say to distributors, I would say, what I'm getting us ready for, because I'm not just thinking in, you know, this is a short-term money grab or this is a 1 year, what's this? I'm thinking 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 years, right?
Right.
And I say, you know, I tell people, I say, the suggested retail price for Weller 12, I think is $39.99. Is it?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think Blanton's is $64.99 or $59.99.
Yeah.
Okay, did we get Alexa jumped in? Okay.
She jumped in, yeah.
All right.
That's the first.
Okay.
That's awesome.
That's cool. So Buffalo Trace sells Weller 12 to distributors for a price that allows them with typical industry margins to hit $39.99 on a shelf.
Right.
They sell to retailers and bars and restaurants who allow them to hit $39.99 on the shelf and have a typical industry margin. Now, obviously, people don't sell it for that. They go way up because of the demand. But I say to myself, when we're making decisions, I say, what happens when one day, and keep in mind, Buffalo Trace just recently doubled production.
Yeah.
What happens one day when there's enough Weller 12 in America for it to be on every shelf at suggested retail price? How do you, as a small independent distillery, compete in that world?
Yeah.
And that's how we make decisions about things, not just short term. And so I think, you know, that's a good lens for people to look at it. But there is, to start with sort of the bullish case of things, right? There is still this huge amount of people who just love bourbon. It's a huge category, us included.
That'd be me.
There is so much enthusiasm and depth in the category, and I don't see any of that waning, right? So it's not like everyone is leaving the category in mass. I think that the entire alcoholic beverage industry is facing headwinds right now, right? So it's not isolated to just bourbon having some woes. And there's obviously these headlines that we all know about that make people ask, is the bubble going to pop? So it's important to point out it's not just bourbon, it's everybody. But in the alcohol space, there's really three categories that people, distributors are excited about and they see momentum and opportunity. And that's bourbon and tequila and RTDs pretty much, right?
Yep.
So with that said, I don't think it's a bubble. People are not just going to stop drinking bourbon.
Right.
But what is happening and going to continue to happen is it gets more and more competitive for producers. And there was a period of time where, to just be blunt, any idiot could just slap a label on a bottle of whiskey and go sell it.
Yeah.
And we had this COVID super cycle that ramped up, and everybody's sales of brown goods went through the roof, and you had consumers just flush with cash, and so the number of bottles over 80 and 100 went skyrocketed. And sometimes, sometimes there can be a $100 bottle of whiskey that I think is a great value, but if it's a 4-year-old whiskey made in a big distillery. Yep. Nothing unique about the grains, the cooperage, the process. Just 4 years old from a big distillery and it's $100 a bottle. Look, to each their own. I don't judge. But to me, as a consumer, I was like, I don't get it.
Right.
And you've seen that category come down a lot. So I think that there's, that's the domestic picture, and domestic is where the majority of bourbon is sold. Mm-hmm. So really, when you look at what everyone's banking on is the international markets, right? Export.
I was going to ask you about that, yeah.
And I've been exporting for well over a decade.
Okay.
I think I began exporting in 2012, something like that, to Europe. And I think at the time, I was sending multiple containers of rye whiskey a year to Europe at a time when there was no American rye whiskey out there, period. Like Rittenhouse didn't have enough for the U.S.
Wow.
So I'm out there selling 100 proof rye whiskey in Europe. And, it was a big hit. And the market has changed over there.
Yeah.
And so through my work with the Distilled Spirits Council of the United States, I've gone on trade missions over the years to literally all over the entire world, throughout Asia, Europe, other parts of the world. And so I've firsthand, again, been in these markets, worked with importers, distributors, talked to consumers. And there is a lot of opportunity. But it's a different market. These are different markets than the United States. And so I hear people say all the time, they go, well, just China and India. They love throwing out China and India just because of the numbers and they drink.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
that's in my questions.
Well,
China, India.
There's a lot to unpack there because yes, these are huge populations, and yes, they drink a lot of alcohol, but they are very complex and difficult to get into.
Okay.
India has, I think, 150% tariff on American whiskeys. And organizationally, I think, people, the United States, North America, Europe, most of Western Europe, there is this really well-defined, economy for our industry, right? There's importers and distributors and truck routes, and you can sell on Amazon, and it's very defined, and the route to market is there, and there's competition, like in the United States, right? So for as an independent or any whiskey company, you can find partners. You go to India, it's complicated, okay?
Right.
I think that's why Diageo bought a company called United years ago, to just get access to distribution there. So that's India. You look at China, it's just not an open market. I've been there, but it's just not an open market. It is not a free market that you can just go in and start exporting and find like 20 distributors and importers. You have to have a Chinese partner over there. I think Campari recently announced that they're doing a partnership for importing and distribution with a Chinese state-owned company.
Oh, are they really?
I believe that was something in the news about a year ago or 6 months ago. Nobody really picked up on it. I saw it. I said, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
You look at the fact that, mainly they're consuming cognac and single malt in China. Mm-hmm. There's a whole culture of gift giving. When I went on a trip to Shanghai and Hong Kong years ago, I really wanted to understand what that was and why the crackdown on corruption made the sales collapse. But you can't just start importing it. You can in very small amounts. But, you look for American whiskey, Jack Daniel's is really the ambassador for American whiskey around the world. I know it's Tennessee, it's not bourbon, but for all intents and purposes, globally, Jack Daniel's is like bourbon, is like American whiskey. And Brown-Forman, has done a phenomenal job building that brand globally. And when they put out their annual reports, they talk about their top markets and sales volumes. Now let's see, I knew we were going to talk about this because you brought it up, so I even looked at some data. And, Jack Daniel's in 2023 sold approximately 500,000 cases in China and 350,000 cases in India. And you got to, keep in mind, this is a company, multi-billion-dollar company with a lot of resources. These are not small independent companies.
Right.
And in total, though, for Jack Daniel's, let's see, that was 500,000 cases in China. Their volume as a whole, though, they sold over 14 million cases worldwide the same year.
Okay.
So 14 million and 5.3 million in the US, 8.7 million exported. So 8.7 million cases sold globally, 500,000 of those in China, 300. So 10% of that was in China and India. Their top markets by volume were Australia, Germany, United Kingdom, France, Mexico, Japan, Canada. With the exception of Mexico, those are all very mature markets, right?
Right.
So I just don't know, it's just not a foregone conclusion that when you get bourbon out into these markets that it's going to sell with the ease it does in America. And I will just tell you, in the US, you see people camping out overnight to get a bottle of this or that and all this enthusiasm and there's social clubs and this and that. When I was in Tokyo a year or two ago, I had easier time finding rare bourbons than I did Japanese whiskey.
Really?
So I could find all the Blantons and, Master's Keep I wanted and, all this other stuff. But when I wanted to get Yamazaki 12 or Hakushu, I actually went to the Hakushu Distillery there. And they weren't even selling full bottles because they didn't have enough. They were selling 50 ml, 200 ml. But I'm I'm at the distillery.
Yes, come on, man.
Come on. So I think that, again, it's not that people don't like bourbon internationally. I think they do, and I think that there's an opportunity there. But I think it takes a lot more investment and time, and it's more suited to very large international companies.
Right.
And it's something that in the next 5 years, I don't know, 5, 10 years, if we get there, when you look further out past 5 years, past 10 years, I do think so.
Sure.
Because as a point of reference, so for American whiskey, 2023, we sold approximately 55.6 million cases of American whiskey sold globally. 31 million cases sold in the US. 24.6 million cases exported. Now, if you compare that to Scotch in 2023 exports, and I don't know, you got these data from various sources.
Yeah.
There's exports only though. So let's just back out UK and whatever Scotland is. 102 million cases. So 102 million cases of Scotch exported, 24.6 million exported for American whiskey. So 4 times the opportunity.
Yeah.
So you hear everyone talk about if we can just get a piece of that business, then there's not enough barrels in all of Kentucky. And I think that's accurate, but it's just not a foregone.
Right, still getting that market.
Getting that market. And you're competing also against, native produced spirits. You're competing against, Irish whiskey. There's a lot of things going on.
Yeah. So let's look at it from this perspective. I mean, you're a smaller brand here in Lexington, but you're doing a great job. You're obviously doing well, but there's all these NDPs out there, people that are just coming into the marketplace now, and we still see it. I mean, there's new brands popping up all the time. They're not going to be able to tap in to any type of global market because they're not going to have the resources to make that happen.
Yeah.
They're not going to have the time frame. They're not going to be able to sit around for 5, 6, 7 years hoping that the Chinese market opens up for them, that they can actually sell a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
So with this increasing growth of NDP still, and this, consumption, it's still there, but it's not, I don't think it's growing as fast as what it was. So, how's the new brand, how do they do it? How can they do it?
Well, I'm glad you asked because I have other numbers and data.
Yeah.
And this is why people have feelings in their gut and it's hard, and numbers help, but there are gut feelings. And yes, listen, as somebody who has been on the front lines of selling whiskey, schlepping around, I'm a traveling whiskey salesman to this day, right? I know what it takes to sell 1,000 cases of whiskey, 10,000 cases, 20,000, 50,000, on. I know it and I see it, whether it's domestic or international. And, you're right. There's a lot of people, and we're early to this, right? And so I think a lot of people are just now coming in, and you have a lot of distilleries being built that don't have any brands or any distribution associated. Distribution is the other big part of this, like the bottom. I mean, you got to have all this lined up. And so, yeah, I mean, just some other news that just came out, by the way, this last week. So October 18th, last week, MGPI released third quarter results, lowering their 2024 forecast. Their distilling solutions, which is bulk sales, is down 36% year over year. And branded sales are down 6%, and their stock dropped 27% in one day.
Man, okay. Sound the alarms.
Sound the alarm. Now, you want to hear another alarm? Another news thing?
Wow.
This is under the radar. I haven't seen anybody report this, but this is something I saw. A letter from DISCUS, Distilled Spirits Council of the United States, to USTR on trade barriers to U.S. distilled spirits exports. Quote, through August 2024, American whiskey exports are down 21% compared to the same period in 2023, January through August.
Oh, man.
So domestically, sales are, it's getting brutal, it's getting tough.
Sure.
MGP, again, specifically, they sold a lot of small craft players. That's a huge part of their business. They're hurting. Exports are down, and the tariffs are often suspended right now. Now, the tariffs are an important part of this. So I worked very closely with DISCUS and the KDA when the tariffs were applied on American whiskey internationally.
Right.
And that was a 25% tariff that really started a process of pretty much decimating our export sales.
Sure.
We're very fortunate that we do very strong domestically. But it really destroyed relationships and progress I'd made over a decade. Because it was first the tariffs, and then it was the pandemic, and then it was supply chain nightmare.
Yeah.
And then it was economic issues and war in Ukraine, believe it or not. All these things impacted it. So, but the tariffs in Europe, which is the biggest market by far for American whiskeys, didn't actually get removed. They've been suspended.
Oh, okay.
And they were set to automatically come back at 50%. Now, people think 25% was bad. 50% is a death blow.
I didn't know that.
So they are right now tentatively set to come back in, I think, March of 2025. And these were put on in retaliation for the steel and aluminum tariffs were put on during the Trump administration.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to get into politics, and I'm not politically about
it. Sure.
But my politics is bourbon, and I'm not going to.
Right.
I'll talk about bourbon and politics. So that's what I was put on, and I think it's important that people know, because there's a lot of talk about tariffs and trade war in this upcoming election, and people may think that one way would result in this and that. But the steel and aluminum tariffs that were put on in the Trump administration were left on under the Biden administration. They were not taken off.
Okay, all right.
Because that's, it's good politics. You're protecting steel. There's national security things.
Right.
So because they were not removed, the European Union did not remove the tariff. They kept suspending it to come back in good faith while they negotiated.
Yeah.
But it's been almost 4 years, and it hasn't come off. So regardless of who wins in November,
in March,
it could be back at 50%. So we're looking at a 21% drop with the tariff off.
Yeah.
So it's already, there was an article in VinePair that came out, I think, a year ago about bourbon sales in Europe, like why it isn't booming. And just, again, it was the same thing of like, it's not that people don't like bourbon, but it's like, they're not just, camping out overnight to get bottles.
Right.
So it just takes more. It's not that you can't do it, but it takes more money and time. So to your question about small independent brands, it takes a lot to do that. Even for the big guys, it takes a lot to do this. So for independents, and I think you have this additional situation, going on, you have obviously competition with tequila and no alcohol stuff and consumption patterns, young people, those things are also headwinds. The large heritage producers have also been doubling and tripling capacity in the last few years.
Yeah.
So it's not just, everyone reads about these new distillery projects, these 150 million plus distilleries.
Yeah.
But keep in mind, the heritage producers have been ramping up.
Oh, yeah.
And you also have this ramp up of these barrel investment funds, right?
Right.
Private equity, people pitching bourbon barrels as an alternative asset investment class. Now, look, I've worked with a lot of brokers over the years. I think there's a need and a place for people to broker barrels, and it's always been a part of the business.
Right.
It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. There should be this, right? That needs to be there. It helps small brands, it helps big brands. And there's good people there, right? And there's been good things that come out in the industry. But I also think you have to, look at this great American tradition we have of what did Alan Greenspan say? Irrational exuberance, right? Where we just love getting rich and making money, and people keep going and they see it. And there was, again, during the pandemic, I paid, again, $750 way back when for a 15-year-old barrels of bourbon and rye. And I think people were charging $1,000 a year for bourbon barrels. So $4,000 a barrel for 4-year-old bourbon just a year or two ago, right?
Yeah.
When you do the math on that, when you look at typical margins, bottling costs, glass costs, that bottle's got to sell for like $80 on the shelf to make margins. That's just not sustainable. It's not realistic. Mm-mm. And you have people, raising capital and getting a lot of investors. And I mean, I know of at least a few funds that have gone over $100 million. So I think we're easily looking into the hundreds of millions of dollars that have been speculatively invested in barrels full of whiskey as an alternative asset, where you're pitching to mom and pop investors from around the country and saying, hey, how cool is it to invest in bourbon? It's just like, it's better than real estate or stocks. And hey, if we don't sell it this year, it only gets better next year, and so on and so forth. And it's fun, and you can drink, we'll send you samples, and hundreds of millions. And again, I don't want to say this people were bad or evil, but you have to look at, well, what was it? Charlie Munger had a great saying. It's like, I'm paraphrasing here, but I think it was, show me the incentive, I'll show you the result.
Yeah.
And when you have people raising these funds, private equity, and they run under typical, scenario of, I think it's like 2 and 20, where you get 20% of the profits and 2% management fee every year, no matter what.
Yeah.
So if you've got $100 million you've raised from investors and you can put it to work, whether or not you make money or lose money for them, you get $2 million a year.
You're getting money. Yeah, you're making money.
And so what is the incentive for that train to slow down or stop? Short of, insane amount of lawsuits or, a real catastrophe. And I think, it's funny, if you read the Mark Barron newsletter every morning, which I think is phenomenal, thing to read for the industry, he puts it together really interestingly, where he will give you all these great articles and sources, but he will structure them in an order where it'll be like talking about barrel investments in America and new distilleries, and then it'll be talking about, lawsuits and scams in the UK for barrel funds. And it's you nodding a wink saying, hey, this is an old industry. We've been through these kind of things in Kentucky and in Scotland. And so I think you have to watch that. And to just put a little perspective to some of these, new distillery projects that are being built, that a lot of them are making money off of these investment funds, right?
Right.
And this started a few years ago, and we know the distilleries that were really big into it, made a lot of money doing it. And, if you're like 100,000 barrels a year is a good number. You read these days for these new distillery projects, right? These $100+ million that just every week I read about a new one, right?
Yeah.
100,000 barrels is a good number.
Yeah.
100,000 barrels of bourbon, roughly 4 years old, is roughly 2 million 9-liter cases. Okay? Now, to put that in perspective, Makers Mark and Evan Williams sell about 2 to 3 million cases a year. Wild Turkey's 1.5 to 2 million. Buffalo Trace, Bulleit, Woodford Reserve around 1 million cases. So you're talking about, I don't care if you've got tens of millions or hundreds of millions in this industry. You're competing against multi-billion-dollar conglomerates who have been in this for decades and decades and have all the infrastructure, and their cost basis is insanely low. And they have other products like single malts and vodkas and water and tequilas. They got a portfolio to sell from. So you got to compete against them. You know how hard it is to create a 1 million case brand?
Yeah. I can't imagine, man.
And so you're either looking at everybody who says that, like, all right, I know that's not going to be to one brand, right? That's going to be sold off to, a long tail of small producers. But again, back to MGP's numbers, 80%, I think, of their bulk sales is to small producers.
Right.
The ACSA put out a report. It came out a few weeks ago about how hard all the small producers are being hit. It's hard to see where that all goes.
Yeah. No, I agree.
In the shorter term.
And that's a great conversation. And man, we could We should probably just do a whole episode about the economics and the business itself.
Yeah.
Because we could easily do a whole show, because we're at the end of the show, but I want to talk about other things too with you, because you've got some exciting news things going on.
We do.
With the brand. If you want to tell everybody about that.
Yeah.
I don't want you to feel rushed, but
No, I'm not rushed, but I'll just say one final note, because I think my employees call me Dr. Doom, because I'm always like talking about these things. I'm actually very bullish on the industry, on the James E. Pepper brand. To what your question is, I'll talk about in a second. Look, I think all this for the consumer is good, because all those barrels just sit there, and it's going to result in more age statements.
Yeah.
Older whiskey at better prices.
Better prices.
And you just got to look at the history of the whiskey lock in Scotland and realize why all those old single malts have these 10, 12, 15-year age statements as core lineups.
Yeah.
So it doesn't end all bad. I just think some people, if you're in this for a short-term money grab, you should look at getting back to fundamentals and look at history.
Yeah.
But to your question, we are, and I am bullish on our brand and our future. We have a property we acquired a while ago, but it's out in Midway, just 20-minute drive from the distillery. Big property, used to be a cattle, and still is. We got cattle there, and tobacco farm. It's just literally 5 minutes down the road from the town of Midway, which is a great town.
Beautiful place.
Beautiful property, surrounded by other farms. I love it out there. And we built one barrel warehouse out there, but the whole thing was rezoned industrial. So we have no development issues. This is a place that we can grow for decades and decades. Awesome. My son will probably develop more of it than I will. Yeah. But it's in the meanwhile, we are aging out there. We're going to grow out there. We're rehabilitating a bunch of old barns and some old structures out there to make this really cool campus for the brand, for the property. Yeah.
I'm excited for you, man. It's going to be great to continue to watch what you're able to do with this brand. So, and we'll have to have you back on again to talk more about that. We should probably talk about this whiskey real quick,
let's do it.
Before we wrap it up. Look at me. I was sitting over here listening to you talk, and I was like,
well, you had to, I'm talking so many numbers, and Daddy's like, I got to take a drink. This guy Amir just
So, okay, here's the crazy thing. You said this has the higher, what'd you say, 12 malted barley? Mm-hmm. Is that right? So, I'm thinking about last week, we had malted barley, and Matt talked about almost like a peach type of flavor on the palate and the finish. And in my mind, now I'm picking that up on this. I know you're going to think I'm crazy. But there's a maltiness. I mean, it's not overwhelming, but it's something that kind of was hidden behind the spiciness, because this is spicy, even though it's not a super high rye.
Right. I
mean, I get that rye spice through there. The sweetness from the corn. I mean, I think we talked about brown sugar on the nose, and still coming through on the palate for me. But the spiciness, the sweetness, and just that little maltiness at the end, I really like that flavor.
Yeah, I think it comes together really well.
Yeah.
To me, I love balance and complexity in whiskeys, like full-bodied but balanced and complex.
Sure.
Where it all kind of gels and one note doesn't just dominate. I mean, you can enjoy, like in our ryes, it's a big rye note. So you can enjoy if you're looking for it. But I think this just really comes together well. Big flavor.
Yep.
I get the peach and the apricot. I was getting that on the decanter earlier, but I get that here, along with the same kind of brown sugar notes.
Yeah, that's very cool. Well, man, before we wrap it up, I appreciate you coming out, spending time again. Sorry Matt wasn't here, but I think we did pretty well.
I think we did all right. I hope he'll be proud and
I think he will
enjoy the episode, and I look forward to catching up with him next time.
Yeah, and thanks for bringing these wonderful drinks. And that 15, I mean, I love your stuff, but man, that's a treat. The 15-year-old, right? That was really nice. I appreciate that. Very much. My
pleasure. I was really happy to share it. And I got to say, I'm very happy that this is honest and true. I enjoyed the decanter and the single barrel bourbon more than the 15-year-old rye from Lawrenceburg, which is, makes me very proud of the team at the distillery and everything we're doing.
You should be. Very much so, for sure. So before we wrap it up, man, any final thoughts from you?
Well, let me just say, I got to do a shameless plug. So we are drinking barrel number 20-341.
Yep.
And this is in the gift shop right now at the distillery.
That's what I was going to ask you. Yeah. Where can people get more information and find your products?
So you can find that exact barrel at the gift shop. And then, of course, we have the decanter there in 1776 rye. So we recently done some improvements to the patio at the distillery, create a nice ambiance with some landscaping. So, please come see us at the distillery, take a tour, have an old fashioned, have a cocktail, have a tasting flight. And then, maybe one day we'll open up, the property out of Midway to the public.
Yeah.
But otherwise, just, hope to see everybody around and just really been a pleasure being here.
Great.
As
and
always.
You've got the website as well.
JamesEPepper.com.
Yeah. And you guys are on socials as well. People could find you.
We're not too big on social media.
No,
We're a little
I know.
Social media is really bad.
And you're not a big social media guy either,
I'm not
at all. So that's understandable, man. People know where to find you, though. That's a good thing.
They know where to find us. We like doing things in the real world. We understand social media is important. You got to do it. So we have a small presence, but we're easy to see. Downtown Lexington. Again, come see us. Come see other distilleries in Lexington. Come stay in Lexington.
Come stay here, yeah.
And obviously, if you can come in April or October when the horses are racing at Keeneland,
Yeah.
I just don't think the weather gets any better. I don't think the energy, the people, the racetrack, it's really a unique and special thing in place in the United States.
I agree 100%, man. So, Amir, thanks so much for coming out, man. Really appreciate it. Always great to catch up with you. Great to see you. Great to enjoy the whiskeys that you guys are putting out, man. You guys are just doing a phenomenal job. And like I said, tremendous amount of respect for you and your team, what you guys are doing here in Lexington. And really just want to encourage, like you said, everybody to come and visit Lexington, visit you guys as well, and see what we have going on here in Lexington. You don't have to go to Louisville. You can check them out as well, but come here and see what we have to offer because it's a lot.
100%.
Really.
And I would just say too, congrats again to you on the momentum and the continued success.
Oh, thanks, sir.
All the episodes, every week, just these amazing episodes drop. And I think I even told you the last time, it's true. It's like, I can't even have time to listen to them all. Like I have like this backlog catalog. And so I have to cherry pick, but I just love watching the show progress. The format progress, everything you're doing progress, and it's great to have you here in Lexington. So thank you for everything that you're doing.
Yeah. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Very humbling. So I do appreciate that. So thank you. Well, guys, we are the Bourbon Life Podcast presented by Liquor Barn. We appreciate their support, the support of all of our sponsors like Pepper Distillery. We appreciate you guys. Obviously, couldn't bring you guys this show every week without their support. Like Matt always says, I'll say it for him in his absence. Whatever time of day it is, you get your Bourbon Life fix on morning, noon, or night. We appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us, spend time with us, and check out what we're doing. If you have any questions or comments, you want to reach out to us, you can email us at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. You can also find us on social media at The Bourbon Life, on Instagram and Facebook. Also, the private Facebook group, The Bourbon Lifers. We'd love to have you join us in there. A lot of fun conversations going on. Also, don't forget our buddy Mike, Big Chief, that does the Whiskey Trip podcast that comes out every Tuesday under our umbrella. He's got some great guests. He's doing a lot of craft stuff. He's down in Texas, getting around down there, but he's also traveling the country, hanging out with some great craft distillers. So check his show out. He's also on Instagram and Facebook as The Whiskey Trip. So with that said, I'm going to wrap it up. Send us home with our tagline, which is, may your glasses always be full, and may you keep on living the bourbon life.
Thank you for joining us for this week's episode of the Bourbon Life Podcast. Our mission at the Bourbon Life is simple: to share our passion for all things bourbon with you every week. And we'd really love to hear your thoughts on how we're doing. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Bourbon Life. You can also contact us by email at thebourbonlife@gmail.com. And you can always find us on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a moment, we'd love it if you would rate us and give us a review. So until next week, we hope your glass is always full and that you keep on living the bourbon life.
Welcome to the kitchen table at James B. Beam Distilling Company, where every visit is a celebration of tradition and flavor. Did you know that the kitchen table is nestled right within the heart of the distillery? That's right. You can experience the essence of James B. Beam's legacy while savoring their delectable dishes. Join them every Wednesday through Sunday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. for a culinary journey like no other. Planning a special event? Let the kitchen table be your host, creating unforgettable memories for you and your guests. And don't miss their exclusive Behind the Beam tour and monthly Claremont Supper Club events, which will feature the 2024 Distillers Share releases at the November event. For more information and reservations, visit beamdistilling.com. The kitchen table at James B. Beam Distilling Company. Come as a friend, leave as family.